We're kicking things off with the toothed sea devil, a truly bizarre anglerfish. This little creature is a real nightmare. Like you need me to tell you that looking at it. The female grows to about 13 centimeters or 5 inches long, and she doesn't have the usual fishing lure that most anglerfish do. Instead, she has a longer, sleeker body that helps her hunt more actively. But the really creepy part is her set of teeth. These teeth sprout from all these odd angles, crisscrossing inside, even outside her mouth, almost like they're stitched together. It just looks insane. Each tooth ends in a hook too, and they can move independently of each other, which helps her trap her prey. It's not clear exactly what she's hunting down there because scientists haven't observed any feeding behavior yet. These things just live so deep down, specimens are too rare to figure out what's actually in her stomach. As for the males, they have a glowing lure that they use to attract prey. Once something gets close enough, it snaps its massive jaws around the poor creature, sometimes even eating animals that are bigger than itself. The males also do something really strange too. They use their large sinus cavities to track down a female by scent, and when they find her, they latch onto her with their teeth and stay there for the rest of their life. Over time, their skin fuses with hers, and most of their body shrivels up while they feed off her BLOOD. It's a pretty crazy, creepy way to live. Then there's the Dumbo octopus, which looks like an adorable Disney creature compared to the nightmare fuel we just covered, hence the Dumbo reference. These little guys are pretty strange though. They look like they have big floppy ears, but those are actually fins. These octopuses don't swim like the others. They live super deep in the ocean, like really deep, over 13,000 feet down. Instead of swimming around, they use their tentacles to crawl along the seafloor. For food, they munch on small crustaceans, worms, or whatever drifts by. They don't bother chewing though. They're more like underwater vacuums, sucking up their meals whole. Because they live so deep, we don't know a ton about them. It's hard to get down that far. So who knows what else there is to learn about these cute, floppy creatures. The telescope octopus is a rare and mysterious creature that lives deep in the ocean, typically between 500 and 6,500 feet below the surface. This little octopus grows to about 8 inches long, and its arms make up almost half of that length. It's related to the glass octopus, another deep sea species, but has some pretty unique features that set it apart. Unlike most octopuses that move around on the seafloor, the telescope octopus prefers to drift with the ocean currents. It spends most of its time suspended in the water column, hanging vertically rather than swimming horizontally like most sea creatures. This helps it stay out of sight of predators since its position in the water is hard to detect. On top of that, its translucent body makes it nearly invisible. It's so see-through that it doesn't cast any shadows, making it even harder for predators to spot. But this transparency isn't just good for hiding, it also helps the octopus sneak up on its prey who can't see it coming. Probably the most recognizable part of this creature are its eyes. Unlike most octopuses, which have round eyes, the telescope octopus has long, tube-like eyes that stick out from its head. They're unmovable stalks and can rotate, giving it a wide range of vision. It's the only known octopus species with eyes that work like a telescope, allowing it to spot both predators and prey from a distance. The rest of its body is also pretty unusual and has delicate webbing between its arms and white suckers along each one. This, combined with its nearly invisible body, give it a kind of ghostly appearance as it drifts through the deep sea. Scientists don't know a lot about this octopus because it's so hard to access, but they think its transparent body and strange eyes may be due to the fact that it stays in a sort of permanent juvenile state. This means it may never fully mature, living most of its life in a form similar to larva.
In our number 7 spot today, we have the zombie worm. These worms were first discovered in 2002, where they were living in the bones of the carcass of a dead whale nearly 10,000 feet or 3,000 meters deep in the ocean. The reason these guys have the common name zombie worm is because of the fact that their main food source is those same bones that they were first found living in. These guys love to eat bones, but in their own special way because of the fact that they don't have mouths or stomachs. Instead, they secrete an acid from their skin that dissolves the bones, which frees up the fat and proteins that are trapped inside. The worms then have their symbiotic bacteria that lives inside of them digest the fat and the protein. Here's the thing though, we actually don't know how the nutrients from the bacteria get to the worm. They either digest the bacteria somehow, or there is some sort of process where the nutrients get transferred. While when they were first found, they were chowing down on whale bones, zombie worms are happy to eat any kind of bones that they can come across, and they've actually been observed making a meal out of non-aquatic animal bones that somehow ended up in the deep sea. In our number 6 spot today, we have the barrel eye. This guy is one weird looking fish, man. The barrel eye fish is also known as the spook fish, and they of course get their names due to their appearance. These fish are relatively small, and they are best known for their extremely unusual, transparent, fluid-filled heads. When these fish were first discovered, there were so many questions surrounding them. At first, scientists thought that their eyes were fixed in place, but after some further research, it was able to be determined that they are able to rotate both up and forward. The fish is usually found motionless, just hanging out in the depths of around 600 to 800 meters or 2,000 to 2,600 feet in the ocean. This fish has been known for quite some time, with its first discovery coming in 1939, but it wasn't until 2004 that a photograph of a live one was ever captured for the world to see how unique these guys really are. There also used to be many drawings of these guys, but never with their transparent head because of the fact that it gets destroyed when the fish is brought up from the deep sea. So, not that I think anyone is gonna go diving in the Mariana Trench anytime soon, but if you do, don't bring these guys up from their home. They're happy down there with their heads fully intact. In our number 5 spot today, we have the ghost fish. This little ghost fish was caught on camera in 2016 as it was casually swimming along a ridge around 8,202 feet or 2,500 meters deep in the ocean. The fish is around 10 centimeters long and has translucent, scaleless skin and the creepiest, colorless eyes on any fish I've ever seen. Here's the craziest thing about this whole ordeal though. This was the first time a live fish from its family has ever been seen before. This little fish swimming along, minding his own business, has absolutely no idea that he was a huge discovery for the human scientists on land. There is still so much that is left a mystery about these guys, but any kind of new discovery is most definitely always a step in the right direction. In our number 4 spot today, we have the aluminum-plated amphipods. These guys are found not only in the Mariana Trench, but also in the Challenger Deep, which is the deepest part of the trench. Amphipods usually have shells made out of calcium carbonate, but the extreme environment in these guys' habitats make their shells basically just dissolve. They of course can't just be walking around naked and shellless, so what do? They adapt in order to preserve their shells. After collecting some of these guys from the deepest parts of the ocean, scientists were able to realize that their exoskeleton contained aluminum on the surface, which then led to the question, how did these guys find metal since it is pretty sparse in seawater? Well, as it turns out, these guys use sugar-based chemicals in their bellies to extract aluminum ions from the mud on the sea floor that it ends up ingesting while devouring the plant debris that floats down from the surface. In alkaline seawater, these aluminum ions form what is called aluminum hydroxide gel, which is a compound that we as humans use for protecting our upset stomach from stomach acid. This gel then coats their shells and acts as a type of chemical protection so as to keep the calcium carbonate exoskeleton from dissolving. I don't know guys, I just think that's one of the coolest things that I've ever heard a shrimp do. This is the first known amphipod to do something like this, and these guys are now an important part of researching how maybe one day we can find an environmentally friendly way to produce aluminum. In our number 3 spot today, we have basket stars. Basket stars are like the Mariana Trench cousin of the starfish, and when you see them, you can totally understand why. These guys have the same main kind of disc that you see on a starfish, but rather than 5 stiff arms, these guys have 5 long, slender, flexible arms that all branch out from themselves repeatedly to form even more little tiny arms, with the last branch usually ending up curled. There is no real rhyme or reason for the shapes of basket stars, as it just depends on how they grow. So while some look beautiful and almost like a webbing of lace, there are some that look absolutely chaotic. You know what they say, no 2 basket stars are the same. I don't think anyone has ever said that, but we're gonna start. Basket stars are able to navigate around the seafloor by wiggling their arms around, and they also have the ability to curl into a ball when they're feeling threatened by predators. They also do eat, as they have a mouth located on the underside of their disc, and they prefer to eat things like krill, small crustaceans, and zooplankton. In our number 2 spot today, we have giant tube worms. These guys were totally unknown to scientists until the discovery of the hydrothermal vents sense because these giant tube worms live off of and thrive in these extreme areas. These giant tube worms feed off of the tiny bacteria that get their energy from the chemicals coming from the vent water. These giant tube worms grow to be around 8 feet or over 2 meters, and they have no mouth or digestive tract. Instead, they rely on those bacteria we talked about to live inside of them for their food, like a wonderful symbiotic relationship. These guys can best be spotted by their bright red plume, which is used for exchanging compounds with the seawater such as oxygen and carbon dioxide. I could talk about these guys for forever because there's so many interesting facts about them, but I'll end off with just one more, and that is that the outer shell of these worms is made up of a natural substance called chitin, which is also the main component in the exoskeletons of crabs, lobsters, and shrimp. One more quickly, but I swear, it's the last one. These tube worms also have no eyes, but they can sense movements and vibrations, and they will retreat into their protective tubes when they feel threatened. Okay. Now I'm actually done. In our number 1 spot today, we have the predatory tunicate, one of my favorite creatures to ever exist. They're so weird. These guys are basically like the Venus flytraps of the deep sea. These invertebrates make their home anchored along the deep sea canyon walls and seafloor as they wait for their meals to drift on by. Like the flytrap, when they catch a piece of their prey, their mouths will snap shut until they are finished digesting their meal. These guys start off life looking kind of like tadpoles, and they swim around until they find a place to land, which they do upside down by secreting an adhesive to keep them in place. From here, they undergo a metamorphosis and have an incredibly large change. Despite having to worry about its predators, these guys are also very picky about where they live. They need to make sure the chemicals in the water as well as the temperature of the water are just right, and it's also imperative that they stay in place once they find their spot. If they're removed from the canyon wall, they unfortunately will die. The predatory tunicate may seem a little weird, but one cool thing is that they have been found to be useful in the medical world, and they may even have the potential to help with conditions such as melanoma and leukemia, which is absolutely incredible.
The barrel-eye fish is a very unique but somewhat eerie looking creature found in the Mariana Trench. Its nickname is the spookfish, and you can probably see why. At first glance, it kind of looks like its eyes are on the front, but they aren't. It has a transparent head, and through this transparent head you can see this pair of glowing orbs. Those are actually its eyes. This may be one of the most unique looking animals I've ever seen, certainly the strangest looking fish. The barrel eye is a deep sea dweller living in the dark depths where sunlight barely reaches, like the Mariana Trench, and they have see-through heads. Inside their heads are big tubular eyes that point upward, not something you see every day. If that's not weird enough though, those eyes can actually rotate. So if the barrel-eye fish wants to check something out above it, it can swivel its eyes up. They usually do this to catch prey drifting down from above. Now, as for the rest of their body, it's pretty streamlined. They're not exactly speed demons, but they've got a sleek design for life in the deep sea. These fish were first discovered in 1939, but they were hard to study because they live so deep under the water, their bodies would actually collapse because of the change in pressure when they were brought up to the surface. But now that we have remotely controlled deep sea vehicles, they've become a lot easier to observe. There are a lot of large animals lurking in the Mariana Trench, and this is because of a phenomenon known as abyssal gigantism. This is where creatures living way down in the deep sea, like the Mariana Trench, grow way bigger than their counterparts up near the surface. One example is the giant amphipods that have been discovered down there. If you don't know what amphipods are, they look kind of shrimp-like, but these giant ones can hit a whopping 13 inches in length, which is massive compared to the shallower water versions. And some other deep sea dwellers down in the trenches, like certain types of jellyfish and squid, also follow this trend of growing way larger than their counterparts near the surface. As to why creatures can get so big in the trench, some theories are that it's because of the extreme conditions down there. The pressure at the bottom of the ocean is insane, and the cold and dark environment might be making the creatures evolve to become giants, a way of adapting to the tough life in the deep sea by becoming supersized. The telescope octopus is a ghostly looking animal. It's pretty much entirely translucent, aside from its eyes, which are strangely tubular. They protrude out of its body almost like telescopes. This allows for wider peripheral vision so it can avoid predators and locate prey. Even cooler though, the telescope octopus has this nifty trick where it can almost disappear. If it feels threatened or just wants to be sneaky, it can wrap its arms around its body, turning it into this smooth, gelatinous blob type thing, blending into the dark background of the deep sea. Even though they have this ghostly, translucent look where you can see the insides of their heads, there's something beautiful about these creatures and the way they just peacefully glide through the water. It's mesmerizing.
Number 7, the barrel-eye fish. This fish looks like Pixar teamed up with Tim Burton and made this fish up. It looks like an animation floating in the water. Nothing makes sense. Someone once said to me that if you've thought about it, chances are someone's done it or that it exists. I imagine that's untrue for most things, but I've definitely thought about what it could be like to have a see-through body, and this fish brought that thought to life, so who knows. The barrel-eye fish has a head that is entirely see-through. It was originally presumed that they only had tunnel vision because any specimens collected would die before they reached the surface and their head would collapse. But now scientists are able to confirm that they actually rotate their eyes to look up through a fluid-filled shield, which is their head, to check out prey above them. They also have fins specifically adapted to allow the creature to hover frozen in place. Their eyes are also designed to capture light just enough to see silhouettes of their prey, so they have really incredible eyes. Weird. They look so pretty though. I like them. Number 6, benthocodone. The thing that fascinates me the most about the creatures in the Mariana Trench is their size and appearance. Why? The water pressure at the bottom of the trench is about 8 tons per square inch, about 60,000 pounds per square inch. You'd think to be able to stand that pressure you'd have to be like Godzilla or something, but that's not the case. It's close to the exact opposite. The benthocodone is a deep sea jelly that is entirely opaque and floats around in a deep red hue, pretty delicate and really small. The opaque bell serves as a way of hiding its food in case their bioluminescent lunch signals other predators. It has over 1,500 tentacles, and despite its little size and delicate flesh, it can survive the immense pressure of the deep. So figure that one out. Number 5, the stout black smelt. This deep sea dweller has also been dubbed the owlfish due to its eyes. In comparison to its body, its eyes are like pretty massive, and we can guess why. The stout black smelt uses its massive eyes to help capture any light it can lay its eyes on. The eyes have cones in them, have like narrow cones that help them suck in as much light as possible, kind of like a vacuum for light. It is a feature they definitely need while they continue to live at depths of over 6,600 meters. Not too much else is known about this little guy, save for the fact it definitely can't stand against a squid. Here's a video of this poor fish losing a battle with a squid. Check it out.
Owlfish are predators that feed on small crustaceans and jellies. They have enormous eyes to help them find their food in the dim light at great depths.
Number 4, the anglerfish / the nope fish. This is the most terrifyingly ugly fish in the world. There are over 200 species of anglerfish that dominate the midnight zone with their terrifying good looks. Each are similar dark brown and gray in color with massive heads and mouths decorated in sharp translucent teeth. The largest species can reach up to 3.3 feet in length or significantly smaller, less than a foot. They are the horror movie villain of the deep with tricky bioluminescent lures. Thanks to these horrifying creatures, Finding Nemo almost had a grimmer ending. Despite their size, the mouth of the anglerfish is massive and, like a python, can stretch wide enough to consume prey twice their size. Considering there's absolutely no light, it's cold and lonely, I guess it makes sense that they are a little angry. One can't afford to make friends out of fish when their next meal could be days away, so fish aren't friends, they are food. Number 3, Dumbo octopus. I love it so much. Weird cute is the best combination. Okay, fight me. I'll just show you a picture of this. Meet the only cute thing to live in such a dark place, the Dumbo octopus. The Dumbo octopus, as you can guess, resembles Disney's adorable Dumbo elephant, as it has big fins that look like ears on either side of its head and just like whoop flims around. These fins help this floating boopity boop steer through currents. They try so hard. While they vary in color and size, they usually reach around 20 to 30 centimeters, so they're really small. While some have also been found to almost reach 6 feet, so that's like one you can hug. Sadly, you won't come across them in shallow water, as these cute water babies are only found around 400 to 4,800 meters below the surface. Since where they live is so dark, they don't need an ink sac to defend themselves, so they don't have one. But honestly,
Who would want to attack this little guy? Look at those eyes. Puss in Boots can take a seat. Number 2, the tripod fish. Can we talk about how this fish looks like they are an alien standing on the moon? Kinda, sorta, yeah? Anyways, yes, that fish is literally standing on the sand. The tripod fish is yet another fish that has adapted in a strange way to live in the deepest, darkest depths of over 6,000 meters. Another tiny but mighty example, it can only grow to about 3 centimeters long, while its long, bony fins can extend to a meter, allowing it to stand. Researchers estimate that fluid is pumped into them, which allows them to become rigid so they can actually prop themselves up. If you're wondering why they want to be taller, ask yourself that question the next time you purchase a pair of heels. By standing tall, it's got the best vantage point to capture prey such as small crustaceans. As they float in the current, the tripod fish can just open their mouths and catch them like snowflakes. However, it is practically blind due to its habitat, so its fins sense vibrations to anticipate predators, so otherwise it just kind of waits there for food. Number 1, last but not least, the Mariana snailfish. Though it doesn't look like it could withstand pressures of 1,000 feet below, the Mariana snailfish proves yet again the age-old phrase of never judge a book by its cover. Meet the deepest fish in the ocean, which thrives at 8,000 feet below sea level. Though they look small, fragile, and slightly translucent, these little guys are actually the top predator at this depth. With few predators, they get the cream of the crop when it comes to food down there. They kind of look like white fat goldfish with a long narrow tail. Its flesh is so translucent you can even see its liver through the skin. Compared to some of the other creatures on this list, it definitely doesn't scream robust survivor, but has adapted in a new clever way scientists are still trying to understand.
Starting off this list in our number 10 spot, we have spoonworms. Spoonworms are a strange looking little creature that can be found in many areas of the ocean, and of course even in the Mariana Trench. These guys are basically just plump, unsegmented worms that find their homes in the burrows on the seabed. Different members of this animal family can live at different temperatures, but most of the deep sea variety live deeper than 3,000 meters where the water is icy cold. The deep sea spoonworms often see the females growing much larger than the males, and in most instances the males end up living inside or at least on the females. I'm not entirely sure of the logistics of that, but it does sound awful. In these species, their stomachs are much longer than their bodies, so their gut ends up folded and coiled inside of them, which I guess isn't unsimilar to human intestines. In our number 9 spot today, we have volcanic glass. Did you know that there are volcanoes underwater, even in the deep sea? Right near the Mariana Trench in 2015, scientists found evidence of what was the deepest ever known volcanic eruption. They didn't catch the actual eruption, but they knew it had happened because of the volcanic glass they found 3 miles or 4,800 meters below the sea. This discovery was huge because it is not often that we find deep sea volcanic eruptions, but it was the first time scientists had found one that had erupted very recently. The volcanic glass is created because of the hot magma coming into contact with the icy cold waters, which cools it down quickly. This discovery helped scientists understand what happens when an eruption occurs underwater, such as how some quick-moving creatures find their home in the aftermath almost immediately. It is said that around 80% of the world's volcanic eruptions occur under the water, and it's still something we know so little about, so this discovery gave us an incredibly important look at what happens afterwards. In our number 8 spot today, we have the sea cucumber. Sea cucumbers are creatures that can be found all over the oceans on our Earth, even in the most extreme environments, such as the Mariana Trench. These guys have many different appearances, but they all look somewhat like a giant worm or some kind of spiky, slimy cucumber. They're often called the vacuum cleaners of the ocean as they mainly feed on tiny particles of algae or microscopic marine animals, and they play a vital role in recycling marine nutrients. They have a bunch of little tentacles that they use to eat, and they can often be found on or close to the sea floor. There are a few species of sea cucumbers that can swim, but not all of them do. In some species, their tentacles are even able to secrete a mucus net that can be used to trap small planktonic organisms. One really crazy thing about some kinds of sea cucumbers is that they can expel their internal organs when threatened. This would seem like a huge problem, but sea cucumbers can regenerate their organs quite quickly after. They also don't have a brain, which I felt like was important to include. I guess maybe if we take our brains out, then can we regenerate our own organs? I'm just joking, obviously.
Coming in at number 7, we have comb jellies. They have a much more scientific name, but I think comb jellies is much more fun, and if you really care about the scientific name, I'll let you take a stab at it on your own. Anyway, these crazy light up alien-like fish can come in sizes from a few inches all the way up to 5 feet. Luckily, like their other jellyman cousin, the actual jellyfish, these guys don't have any stingers. But they will attack their own sometimes, so watch out for those underwater MMA matches between these guys. They swim through the ocean by swaying their comb teeth-like tentacles on the side of their body, and they are another sight for sore eyes, really. Just recently, the New York Times found a new way to continue researching these creatures by taking samples of their DNA from a process that is called environmental DNA sampling, where scientists collect snippets of DNA from fallen hair, skin, and mucus that the creatures shed into their environment underwater. It is said that the 200 known species could rise to 6 to almost 800 using this new system. I kinda would love some more, but can't deny that these creatures look totally out of this world, so props to the jellymans. At number 6, we have the sea devil anglerfish. So if a fish has the name dragon or devil in its name, you know it's one to probably look out for. Found deep in the Mariana Trench, probably from swimming up from hell, is the sea devil anglerfish. It has a crazy misshapen body, sorry to body shame, the razor-like teeth and fins, and teeth and eyes that can disappear just like that. Yeah, sounds like some demonic powers to me. Luckily for everyone on the planet, these fish aren't that big. Females are larger, and the biggest they can grow to be is 8 inches long, while males are only about 2 inches. It also has a bioluminescent bulb on top of its head that lures in prey before it even has a second to swim away. Now, does this sound familiar? Yeah, it should, because if you ever watched Finding Nemo, then this is the fish that Marlin and Dory almost got eaten by. So if you happen to be a superhuman and can swim at great depths to see these scary fish, in the words of Dory, just keep swimming. Coming in at our halfway point at number 5, we have the frilled shark. Remember the puffy shirt from Seinfeld with all of the frills? Well, Jerry looked pretty terrible in it, and this shark looks terrifying in it. Well, with them, not in it, because let's face it, the shark isn't wearing a shirt, but either way, I'm sure it could still make the shirt look cooler than Jerry Seinfeld. Anyway, this shark has the body of an eel with the head of probably one of the scariest creatures on Earth. It has 6 frilly gills on the side of its head to no one's surprise, and can measure up to 6 feet in length. That's longer than me. It also has 20 rows of razor-sharp, trident-shaped teeth that will tear right through any flesh it can sink its teeth into. They usually live in waters around 4,000 feet deep, and the odd time humans catch one and bring them to the surface, but please don't do this. 1, because don't go near these crazy things, and 2, because these creatures can't handle life above as they are used to the great underwater pressure. Any brought to the surface will almost die immediately. So remember, frilled sharks are friends, not food. Okay, we have had dragon and demon in the names of some of our underwater creatures today. Can you guess one more that we might haven't have said? No? Well, how about goblin? That's right, coming in at number 4, we have the frilled shark's trusty companion, the goblin shark. If you get one look at these things, you will understand exactly why these things are called goblin sharks. They have a large protruding snout, then underneath that is a protruding jaw of razor-sharp teeth. Honestly, once again, to put it simply, these guys are just straight up ugly and scary. They also aren't the normal gray color that most sharks are. They are instead colored with a pinkish hue. In case these guys aren't scary enough, you will be happy to know that these things grow to be 18 feet in length. But you probably won't ever see one, as they live at depths of 3,000 feet and go deeper the older they get. Other than that, there is not much known about these creatures because of how deep they live, but also because of how freaking scary they are. Yeah, Dewey ain't going anywhere near that thing. Starting us off in our top 3, at number 3 is the Dumbo octopus. I know, the thing doesn't sound or seem that scary. After all, it's named after a freaking Disney cartoon, I get it, but these crazy looking things are known to eat its prey whole. They only grow to be about a foot in length, but if they can swallow its prey whole, I don't want to imagine how big its prey can be. Because maybe they even eat like snakes, who knows? Anyway, these guys live at depths of 9,800 to 13,000 feet and are actually the deepest dwelling octopus known to science. That's pretty cool. So while these guys actually look kinda cute, I'm sure they are quite the scare for some deep water fish, as well as who knows if they evolved to have larger cousins at the very bottom of the sea. Who knows? Yeah, I don't. At our number 2 spot, we have the cousin of Dumbo, the telescope octopus. These things are so weird and also have a completely transparent body. Well, almost, so I guess that makes it more translucent, but I don't know. Anyway, these weird looking octopi live at depths of 6,500 feet and they don't swim horizontally either. They actually just float vertically, making it harder for deep sea predators to spot it. It also has webbing between its tentacles, giving it a ghostly-like shape. And one last thing that makes it kinda creepy is that these creatures have wicked eyes. In its head are 2 protruding eyeballs that can fully rotate and keep an eye out for its deep water predators. What kind of predators? Well, let's check out our number 1 spot. And finally, coming in at number 1 spot is sea monsters. Okay. Have sea monsters actually been found in the deep waters of the Mariana Trench? No. But could there be? Absolutely. I know I have gone on and on about how little our oceans have been explored, but one of those specific places in our oceans is the Marianas Trench. It is so deep that no human on Earth can reach its depths fully, and even if they did, they would need an incredibly powerful pressurized submarine. So who the heck knows what else is swimming around at the bottom of our oceans? I mean, they said the giant squid was a legend and it turned out to be real, so anything goes, really. Let's just hope we find footage of a monster first and not find out the hard way, you know, by being lunch.
Starting off this list in our number 10 spot, we have comb jellies. Comb jellies are gelatinous creatures that are named for their unique plates of fused cilia, which are called combs. These combs help the jellies move through the water like boat oars, and while other microscopic organisms also have this sort of mechanism, comb jellies are the largest animal with this feature. These combs are also part of the reason that comb jellies are so gorgeous to look at. Rather than bioluminescence, the rainbow light effect that can sometimes be seen on them is from light diffracting off of the combs in all different directions. Many comb jellies have one pair of tentacles, although they appear to have multiple, but that is just caused by their tentacles branching out. These tentacles are used to help them hunt like a sort of fishing line. Aside from this, these jellies don't sting, which is always a good thing. Not that I'm planning on heading into the deep sea anytime soon. In terms of today's list, I'd say that these guys are one of the less creepy creatures we've got going on. In our number 9 spot today, we have the ping pong tree sponge. Doesn't this name sound so cute and sweet, like something you'd want as like a little pet? Well, think again. These little things are not what their sweet name would suggest. The name, of course, comes from their appearance, as they quite literally look like a little tree that's growing ping pong balls, but those little ping pong balls are where it all starts. The ping pongs have tiny little hook-like extensions that are there to trap any kind of prey that gets too close. From there, the sponge will slowly consume its prey while still alive. This may not be the most vicious creature in all of the deep sea, but it is proof that looks can be very deceiving. Would you have thought that this little thing would be a carnivorous creature? It honestly was a little surprising to me, personally. In our number 8 spot today, we have the deep sea dragonfish. These guys are a pretty strong contender for strangest looking animal on this list. These predatory fish use their fang-like teeth to grab onto their prey in the dark, cold, deep sea environment. They have no scales and instead slippery eel-like skin, which only adds to their creepiness level. Similar to the anglerfish, these guys have a lighted barbel that hangs from its lower jaw to attract its prey towards it. These fish really use bioluminescence to their advantage, but they also have another less common ability. Firstly, since many of their prey are also bioluminescent, they have a special stomach that will ensure the light cannot be seen from the inside of their stomach so as to not give away their position. Secondly, they're able to produce a red glow. This glow is thought to perhaps be used to signal other dragonfish, but it is definitely used by them to illuminate and detect their prey. They are the only known fish that has the ability to both produce and see red light, as most fish can only see more of a blue light. So while these guys are definitely very creepy to look at, they're also pretty interesting and kinda talented. In our number 7 spot today, we have rattails. These fish are usually fairly large, and while most species belonging to this family are deep sea fish, there's one specific species that are found in the Mariana Trench. These fish have larger heads and eyes, but then their body tapers out into a thin tail fin, which is how they got their common name. Rattails are one of the most common deep water fish, and they like to snack on things like smaller fish, some kinds of crustaceans, and even sometimes lanternfish. These fish are great scavengers, which is an important part of the deep sea ecosystem. When these fish are young, they tend to stay in more shallow water, but as they grow older, they migrate further into the icy cold depths of the sea. In our number 6 spot today, we have barophilic bacteria. This bacteria is characterized by its preference for an environment with pressure greater than our atmospheric pressure, which of course makes the trench a perfect candidate for a home. These bacteria have been isolated from deep sea environments and found to grow rapidly at low temperatures and high pressures. This low temperature high pressure combo that is found in the deep sea environment is usually the cause for the decrease of the fluidity of lipids, as well as the depression of the function of biological membranes. But this doesn't happen in this bacteria, which has led to the theory that they must have some sort of mechanism that allows their lipids to adapt to their extreme environment. environment. Aside from their superpower, these bacteria help to support life by being a source of carbon for the deep sea animals that end up ingesting them. In our number 5 spot today, we have immense pressure. In every part of this video series, I have talked about the extreme environment that is the Mariana Trench and just how much pressure exists down there, but I haven't taken the time to really dive into just how much pressure is down there. So we're gonna do that now. The deeper you go into the ocean, the more pressure you'd feel. Close to the surface of the ocean, we're sitting at a base of 1 atmospheric pressure, but when you go just 10 meters deep, that number already doubles. Considering the Mariana Trench is 11,000 meters deep, this is obviously going to increase greatly. The pressure causes the air in your body to compress, and the deeper you go, the more dense the water becomes. While the concept of the increasing pressure is easy to understand, it truly is really hard to conceptualize how this change happens and just how deep this trench really is. 1 atmospheric pressure is 1.01325 bars, which is the unit used to measure pressure. So like I mentioned before, this is where we were sitting when close to the surface of the ocean, but in the depths of the Mariana Trench, that number skyrockets to 1,086 bars, which apparently would be the equivalent of 100 elephants standing on you. So it's suddenly making a lot more sense as to why people don't journey down to the Challenger Deep very often. In our number 4 spot today, we have arrowtooth eels. The arrowtooth eels that reside in the Mariana Trench are a species that not much is known about. These eels range somewhere from 23 to 160 centimeters or 9.1 to 63 inches in length. They're bottom-dwelling fish and can be found in waters around 3,700 meters or 12,100 feet deep. They can be told apart from other eels in their early stages because of their telescopic eyes during the larva stage. These guys like to feed on the scraps left over from other larger fish meals as well as invertebrates, but they have also been known to be partly parasitic as they sometimes burrow into the flesh of other fish. Here's a little clip of one swimming past a camera that is located around 11,000 meters deep in the sea. In our number 3 spot today, we have the hydrothermal vents. The Mariana Trench is part of the Pacific Ring of Fire, which is a tectonically active region where plates are colliding and causing subduction, which is how the trench itself was formed. Through this tectonic activity, as seawater seeps downwards through the oceanic crust, it gets really hot and becomes very rich in chemicals. This leads to the water becoming so buoyant that it comes back out of the surface of the sea floor, and this is what is called a hydrothermal vent. The water coming out of the vent is that same super hot, super chemically rich water, and it is an extremely important part of underwater ecosystems. The water from the vent is highly acidic and hot, while the water in the depths of the ocean is slightly basic and freezing cold. There are many different smaller species who come to the vent areas because of the chemicals in the water as well as the heat, which helps certain types of food sources grow, which they then want to consume. This then leads to it being a feeding hotspot, as larger predators can also come to the vent to feed on the other smaller organisms that are already in the feeding area. There are usually a high amount of animals found in the area of a hydrothermal vent, but not a wide variety of different animals, as the temperature extreme is not suited for everyone in the deep sea. In our number 2 spot today, we have vent crabs. Okay, so to piggyback off of the last point, we have a creature that loves the hydrothermal vents, and that is the aptly named vent crab. These white crabs are actually endemic to hydrothermal vents, and they were first described in 1980. The crabs in this family are usually blind and abundant. In fact, their numbers are so vast that scientists often use the clusters of them to help find the location of the hydrothermal vents. The eyes of vent crabs change throughout their life, which helps them adapt to their environment. Young vent crabs usually have eyes that would be comparable to their shallow water companions, but upon metamorphosis, their eyes degenerate and become naked retinas. Hydrothermal vents produce light in the infrared wavelengths, and this change in the vent crab's eyes actually allows them to better see this light, although it causes them to not be able to see most other things. It's like a similar concept to night vision goggles. So basically, vent crabs have night vision, I guess? It is so interesting to see see and learn about how these deep sea creatures adapt to their individual environments and circumstances. Vent crabs often eat tiny organisms and bacteria, which is another reason they thrive near the vents. In our number 1 spot today, we have giant isopods. Before I dive into this, number 1 point, make sure you hit that thumbs up button if you're enjoying the video so far. It really helps us out. Despite their appearance, these guys are neither aliens or pill bugs and are just another one of those strange and weirdly large deep sea creatures. These rather large crustaceans can reach lengths of around 15 inches, and while that's not the biggest deep sea creature out there, that's still pretty insane for the isopod world. These guys get their size from what is known as deep sea gigantism, which is an evolutionary tendency for deep sea creatures to grow larger than their shallow water counterparts. It isn't exactly clear why this happens, but it does, and is seen in a few different species, such as those giant shrimps we were talking about last time. It is thought that it may be due to the cold temperatures, which may increase cell size and lifespan, which both may lead to increased body size. Giant isopods are related to woodlice, albeit distant cousins, which is why they look kind of similar. These guys are scavengers who usually wait to collect the scraps of whatever is left over from another predator's meal, whether those leftovers are located on the seafloor or if they're falling from the waters above like sea snow.
Starting us off at number 10 is the barrel eye fish. Now this fish isn't that creepy looking, I will admit, but it is a little gross and futuristic looking. Why? Because you can see directly inside its head. Since the Mariana Trench is so deep and dark, how the heck is a fish gonna see where it's going or what's around them? Answer: they're gonna make their own light. The barrel eye fish has a transparent head with 2 barrel-like eyes inside of its head that face upwards. This lets the fish see the silhouettes of its prey. How convenient. Scientists believe that its transparent head allows for the barrel eye fish to collect just a bit more light, which gives this fish just a bit more of an advantage over its deep water competition. The barrel eye fish wasn't even known to humans until 1939, when one was pulled from its underwater home at 2,500 feet below the surface. Although they can't survive past a certain point, as they are too used to the deep underwater pressure. Luckily, scientists now have high-tech underwater rovers that they can use to go learn more about the reproduction and life cycles of these strange fish. At number 9, we have the deep sea dragonfish. Any fish with the name dragon in it is sure to be a sight for sore eyes, literally. This fish has humongous teeth, a pretty ugly face, hashtag sorry not sorry, and is known to be a deep underwater assassin. These fish are 6 inches or 15 centimeters long and live at the depths of 6,000 to 7,000 feet. Like many of these deep water creatures, the dragonfish also has the highly sought after bioluminescent feature. Beneath its chin dangles a lighted barbell that is used to communicate with other fish, as well as is used for camouflage when need be. Other fish mistaken the light bulb for another smaller fish or even prey of its own, only to be surprised that itself is the prey and that it's way too late. Chomp! Some dragonfish even have gained the ability to glow red. Some believe that the red glow is used to signal its deep water brethren, while others believe it to be a signal of the dragonfish about to pounce. Either way, a glowing red fish sounds terrifying to me no matter how big or small, so I'ma stay in the shallow end. At number 8, we have the deep sea hatchetfish. Why is it called a hatchetfish? Well, imagine if that hatchet in your garage had fins, eyes, gills, and could swim freely around the ocean. Then it would pretty much look like this guy. Or one of these guys, because believe it or not, there are over 40 different species of hatchetfish out there, and I'm sure there is more somewhere. These fish are the same size as the dragonfish, so they aren't that big, but they can be found at depths of 5,000 feet. Be careful though. These guys are also sneaky because they have that highly sought after bioluminescent feature and can camouflage themselves from predators quite easily as well. I mean, we won't see them often because of the depths that they live at, but that's okay. I'm not complaining. I like seeing the hatchet stay where it belongs. In my garage, safely kept away from the water and only taken out when having backyard campfires. And man oh man, does that sound good right now.
Next we have the Osedax, which is a pretty cool creature but kinda nasty at the same time. On top of that, they look like something from another planet. They have a few nicknames: bone worms, zombie worms, and bone-eating worms. Pretty ominous by the sounds of it, but these guys are basically underwater recyclers. These worms have adapted to bore into the skeletons of dead animals, particularly whale carcasses, to access the fatty lipids locked inside. They were first discovered at a depth of 10,000 feet. They've evolved to thrive in the extreme conditions of the sea floor. Their main source of food is the remains of dead whales and other animal carcasses that sink to the ocean floor. The success of zombie worms relies on teamwork, with the females taking on the majority of tasks. Using acidic secretions, they drill into the bones of dead animals, freeing up all those valuable lipids. This involves a symbiotic relationship with bacteria as well that aid in the digestion and processing of these released lipids. This allows the zombie worms to make a living in the deep sea environment where food sources are pretty scarce. Next on the list we have the goblin shark. These have to be the most horrific looking sharks in existence, right? I mean, goblin sharks, it's really just a perfect name for them. Just look at that. I'm like, yeah, that's a water goblin. They have elongated, flattened snouts, almost like they have swords sticking out of their faces. They have a pinkish white coloration, and their skin is actually kind of translucent. You can almost see their blood vessels underneath. Combine this with their long, sharp teeth that just jut out at odd angles, and you've got a face that only their mother could love, and even that's a bit of a stretch. Goblin sharks also have the ability to thrust their jaws forward to snatch their prey, almost like the xenomorph in Alien. Take a look at this. The anglerfish. These are those super deep sea fish with the bioluminescent lures that hang in front of their mouths. In the Mariana Trench, various species of anglerfish have been found, and they're all pretty unsettling to look at. One of the strangest parts about certain species of anglerfish, though, is how they mate. Males are significantly smaller than females, and often have a completely different role in the reproductive process. When a male finds a female, he latches onto her body and eventually fuses with her, becoming this permanent reproductive partner. This allows the female to have a readily available mate, and this is very important because encounters with other anglerfish are rare. The deep sea environment they live in is just so sparse, so they gotta take what they can get. But let's talk about those jaws. They're huge, allowing them to consume prey much larger than themselves. Their jaws can also extend, and their stomachs can stretch, allowing them to engulf prey whole. And to top it off, anglerfish are known as ambush predators. Many of them are dark, helping them blend into the abyss and avoid being seen by prey and other predators. Next up, we have the vampire squid. These are really cool looking creatures. I think they may be my favorite type of squid, even though they're not actually squids. I'll get to that a bit later though. Anyway, pretty clear how these things got their name. It looks like it's wearing your classic Halloween-y vampire type cape. Batman squid would have also been a good nickname for these things. Like I said, despite their name, these things are actually not true squids. They're more closely related to octopus, and they belong to a distinct order of cephalopods called Vampiromorphida. And they're the only living species found in this group. All the other creatures that were once in it are now extinct. The vampire squid has a gelatinous body covered in photophores, which can emit bioluminescent light. It also has webbing between its arms, which creates that kind of cloak-like appearance. This allows the squid to control its buoyancy. The coolest thing about vampire squids, though, are their defense mechanisms. They can turn themselves inside out, covering their bodies with spines, and this helps frighten off predators. Next on the list is the fang-toothed fish. You can clearly see how this thing got its name. This thing is horrifying. It's small, only reaching about 6 inches, but it has that fearsome set of jaws and a pair of dead white eyes, making for a pretty intimidating little creature. I'm sure it still wouldn't be fun being bit by one of these things. They're almost like zombie fish a little bit, the way their eyes look. Plus, those teeth are so large that the fang tooth can't actually close its mouth completely. They're disproportionately large compared to their body. Their dark coloration, usually a deep brown or black, allows them to blend into the darkness of the deep sea as well, making it easier, of course, for them to ambush their prey. As scary as they look, though, they're mostly feeding on smaller fish and zooplankton. An interesting thing about the fangtooth are their unique swim bladders. Unlike many fish which rely on their swim bladders for buoyancy, fangtooths have a reduced swim bladder, which helps them remain stable in the extreme pressures of the deep sea. This next one is actually pretty cool. Plastic-eating microbes. There are some really strange microbes living deep within the trench. Scientists have found some microbes able to survive deep in an environment with intense pressure and just pitch black darkness. One pretty remarkable discovery among these mysterious microbes is a type that actually has the ability to consume plastic. As wild as this is, it's actually a good thing because plastic pollution has become a pretty big environmental concern. Finding microbes that can break down plastic is kind of a good sign. It could potentially assist in reducing plastic waste in the ocean. Mariana Trench, reaching depths of over 36,000 feet, makes for pretty extreme challenges for life. The pressure at those depths is intense, equivalent to about 1,000 times the atmospheric pressure at sea level. This goes to show how adaptable life can be in the most extreme environments. Finally though, we have the deep sea dragonfish. This is a group of bioluminescent fish that lurk deep in the Mariana Trench, and what a horrifying looking creature it is. This thing looks like, you know that hallway monster in Hellraiser that like runs along the wall? Reminds me of that. These guys have long fang-like teeth and elongated bodies, incredibly menacing, sort of like a piranha and a serpent fused together. These ones are also, again, bioluminescent, producing light through chemical reactions in their bodies. They use this bioluminescence not just to navigate the darkness of the depths, but to lure prey and communicate with each other. The light can be emitted from various parts of their bodies, helping them to camouflage against the faint light from above, making it easier to surprise unsuspecting fish. They also have an excellent sense of smell, which allows them to detect food from a distance. Once they identify their prey, they strike quickly, using their sharp teeth to capture and consume.
Number 10, the frilled shark. This is one of the most stealthiest sharks in the sea. This shark is so stealthy that researchers believe that it had been extinct for 80 million years. Little did they know, it's just very good at hiding. The frilled shark is a deep sea dwelling creature that was rediscovered in 2015 when 2 Australian fishermen caught it in their net. Frilled sharks kind of look like an eel, a shark, and a hairbrush kind of had a baby. It has a long, slender body that slithers through the water in a very serpenty way. It earns its name due to the 6 gills it has on either side that fan out in an unusual way. But the really scary part is how many teeth they have. They have over 300 mini daggers in their mouth, angled backwards like hooks so they latch onto their prey like Velcro. It is one of the few creatures on Earth to be considered a living fossil because it happens to be the only one of its kind. It has no other relatives, which if you're someone who doesn't like their in-laws, not really a bad thing, I guess. Number 9, massive amphipods. If you love jumbo shrimp, then oh boy, this would be a treat. Massive amphipods have been found in the trench. They kind of look like massive shrimp, which is a direct result of a phenomenon called giantism. The massive crustaceans can grow to over a foot long in the Challenger Deep, while the ones closest to the surface only reach about 3 centimeters. The reason they have gotten so large is a part of their strategy to help them survive the immense pressure of being a deep sea survivor. A group of molecules called a piezolyte were found, and they help stabilize proteins against hydrostatic pressure. This helps them survive and could have a hand in helping them grow to be so large. Number 8, glass amoebas. In order to live that far down into the ocean, there are going to be 3 main things that you'll have to overcome: lack of light, freezing temperatures, and a lot of pressure. Therefore, intense survival skills are required. Scientists were shocked to find Foraminifera, a kind of amoeba, surviving down in Mariana's Trench, but with some alterations. This kind of organism is found all over the world, but usually they build hard shells for themselves out of calcium carbonate. Down in the trench, the intense pressures dissolve these minerals, leading them to instead build a kind of glass house. They have adapted to use proteins, organic polymers, and even sand, which is made from silicon dioxide, which forms a kind of pressure-proof glass shell. A specific kind of Foraminifera called xenophyphores have taken this one step further and glue sand, casts of shells, and microbial skeletons to their feces, which essentially makes a pressure-proof shell to live in. Gotta do what you gotta do.
Next, let's talk about the barrel-eye fish. This fish is seriously one of the weirdest creatures you'll ever see. It has a see-through head, and it's got these glowing green orbs that look like eyes, but here's the thing, those eyes are actually inside its head, under a see-through section of skin, a bit like an astronaut helmet. Super strange, right? This fish lives out in the Mariana Trench, deep where sunlight doesn't really reach. Its tubular eyes face upwards, and they can rotate, so if it was to look up and find some food floating by, it can just swivel its eyes upwards. As for its body, it's pretty sleek and streamlined, built for deep sea life. These fish were first discovered back in 1939, but it wasn't easy to study them because when they brought them up to the surface, the pressure change would just crush their bodies. But now with remotely controlled submersibles, we can study them much more easily. Now let's talk about Osidax, aka the zombie worm. These things sound like something from a sci-fi movie, and honestly, they kinda look like it too. Also known as bone worms or bone-eating worms, these creatures creatures are nature's cleanup crew at the very bottom of the ocean. They feed on the remains of dead whales that sink to the ocean floor. When a whale dies, its body becomes a huge buffet for different sea creatures, including zombie worms. Instead of mouths, these worms have a special trick, if you want to call it that. They secrete acid that can dissolve bone-eating acid. Then they burrow into the whale bones, which is how they get their food. And here's where it gets even cooler. Osedax worms have a partnership with bacteria. The bacteria help break down the bones, and in return, the worms offer the bacteria a nice little home. These worms come in all sorts of colors, and scientists are still discovering new types. Next on the list is the deep sea hatchetfish. This fish looks pretty cool, but also incredibly strange. Thank God these things are so small, because just imagine that horrifying face, but like the size of a whale. They look like frowning ghosts. The deep sea hatchetfish is a small fish that lives in the deep, dark parts of the ocean, like the Mariana Trench. It has a very unique hatchet-shaped body and a hatchet-like metallic color, which helps it blend in with its surroundings. And they glow. The hatchetfish can control how bright it glows, though. It uses its bioluminescence both for communicating with other fish and for attracting prey. Let's talk about the fangtooth fish next. Fangtooths are some of the scariest looking creatures you'll find in the Mariana Trench. They're small, but their teeth are absolutely massive compared to the size of their bodies. These fish have a very simple body design, a long cylindrical shape that's built for life in the deep. But what really makes them stand out is their huge, sharp teeth. In fact, their teeth are so big that when they close their mouths, the teeth don't fit all the way inside, so they just kind of stick out. Aside from their terrifying appearance, though, these fish aren't very dangerous. They feed on other small fish and invertebrates that live in the deep ocean. Again, just glad these things are about 6 inches long instead of 6 feet. Some things are just too ugly to be any bigger than they are. No offense to the fangtooths in the audience. Next on the list is the deep sea dragonfish. This creature is pretty incredible, partly because it's got some crazy bioluminescence going on. The dragonfish can produce its own light, which helps it in the pitch black depths where it lives. The light comes from these little organs called photophores that line its body. But what's even cooler is that the dragonfish has a big long chin with a light producing organ at the end of it. It uses this to lure prey right into its mouth. The dragonfish also has some seriously terrifying teeth. They look like something straight out of a monster movie. Again, might not be the biggest fish in the deep, but it definitely looks like one you'd want to avoid if you were swimming down there. Here are 3 words that don't sound very appealing placed right next to one another. Giant toxic amoebas, or GTAs. Scientists call them xenophyophores. How would you feel about running into a 4-inch long amoeba? Probably not great. These guys are found all over the Mariana Trench, though, and they're huge for a reason. The extreme cold, insane pressure, and the complete lack of sunlight make the conditions perfect for these single-celled organisms to grow to pretty gigantic sizes. They're incredibly tough survivors. They've adapted to become super resistant to a bunch of harmful stuff that would kill pretty much anything else, including us humans. They can tolerate uranium, mercury, lead, and other dangerous substances which would be lethal to us. These toxic amoebas have been found at crazy depths of up to 6.5 miles or 10.6 kilometers underwater, and scientists wouldn't be shocked if they find more of them even deeper one day. And finally, we've got the Mariana snailfish, a species that was discovered in 2014 and holds the title for being the deepest living fish. It lives at nearly 27,000 feet below the surface, over 5 miles deep. The pressure down there is so intense that it would crush a human in seconds. This ghostly white fish looks soft and squishy, kind of cute, like it might even melt if you touched it, but somehow these things survive in one of the harshest, most unforgiving environments on Earth. The snailfish's body is incredibly adaptable, allowing it to survive where most other creatures wouldn't last a minute. Even though it looks delicate though, it's a top predator in its world, feasting on tiny crustaceans and other prey. Its flexible blob-like body lets it squeeze into tight spaces, hunting in places that other fish could never reach.